Good evening. I'm going to try to just start off this broadcast with a little reflection on what someone wrote to me as a statement about the two witnesses, since that's what I've been focusing on so much. And I'm going to use that as a little bit of a demonstration of how somebody can come up with very accurate information, but they're missing the key when they don't know about tea and dough. When they haven't considered anything that tea and dough said. So they keep on, basically they see somebody talking about tea and dough and the two witnesses, and they think then they know everything about it. And that's their problem. And then they talk about how Satan is going to have the ultimate deception. And the fact is that it's true that the ultimate deception is when you're standing right in front of the older members in their teachings, of course, on the videos, in the materials, as they were standing in front of the world through their exit that was broadcast all over the world for many months. Well, not many months, for several months, but then, yes, many months, because it keeps on coming up over and over again, so that people get to reflect back on it again, over and over. When you ignore all that, and you write it all off, then you're basically denying the next level. You're choosing to look to a false god, a false prophet, those that everybody's a prophet that's actually speaking speaking based on what the next level provided. So if they're speaking about what Jesus said, then they're prophesying. But being a prophet is nothing if what you're prophesying is old information that's not in context anymore, except when it's when the full truth is plainly spoken of and boldly spoken of, like tea and dough did, and like Jesus said would happen when he came back. So let me and after I talk about this a little bit, I want to jump back to the Revelations 11, where it talks about the judgment. And that takes us into Revelation chapter 13. That also has links into Revelation chapter 14, 15, 16, 17. Actually, that's the second wave stage that will take me probably several videos to round out. And so anyway, this afforded me the opportunity by receiving this little comment that you see on the screen there, on my split screen. You see the top of it and the bottom of it. Actually, the bottom of it is where I start talking about it, right here. That's my response. And it was kind of good because it got me back to giving a little more attention to additional evidence of the two witnesses being individuals. And this person that wrote this also has some things that are flat out wrong because he's misapplied them. and not seeing them in context, because he doesn't have the overview. He didn't really stand a chance, or he, she, or I don't know, or whatever they are in terms of their gender. But like Doe said, they hardly stood a chance to see the truth. So some are doing very well by seeing as much as they saw, but the icing on the cake is to once you get all that, to let it go. When you find something when you still seek, if you're still seeking, but the only thing you do is look at what people are saying about the same information over and over again, then you're not really seeking. Or if you are still seeking, then the next level will see to it that you're confronted with more true information, more accurate information. And maybe that's what's happening to this person. So my comment to him might be a chance for him to look into it a little more. And so anyway, so he starts off by saying that the two witnesses are symbolized by the olive trees and the lampstands. True, Revelations 11:4. And then he poses a question that is really not a question. He says, where in the Bible is Moses or Elijah, the New and Old Testaments, etc., ever symbolized as such? Well, as I said, I never claimed that Moses and Elijah were the two witnesses. And I'm not going to go through all this because I've talked about it in previous broadcasts. But why other people say that it was Moses and Elijah, and how that can actually be accurate, because the fact is that Moses and Elijah were also, according to T, the same individual that was the soul, the older member soul that was in the body, Jesus, and then Doe. That T actually awakened to his task, to finish his task, to birth the student body to the throne, or he was birthed to the throne so that he could birth the student body to the throne. Well, no, he's not birthing the student body to the throne. He's birthing the student body to their participation in the throne, which is making, they're having their own throne, yes. They become kings and priests in service to the next level. Not the religious terminology, meanings of those words, like the Catholics and the nuns and the monks, and the kings, not like the kings of the earth, or like the way that the Luciferian space aliens think of themselves as kings. Not like those kind of kings, but just kings as just being above human, being more advanced than any of the humans, even though they're like toddlers in the next level, toddlers with a next level grown next level grown vehicle that is either an infant vehicle or an adult vehicle, of a certain kind of adult vehicle. Sorry, but what this person is pointing out is that he's saying that Moses and Elijah aren't indicated to be the two witnesses. And of course, some people say that, there's some evidence that Moses and Elijah were the two individuals that came to appear with Jesus at the Transfiguration Mountain. And that may very well have been the case, that it was Moses and Elijah, those actual physical vehicles that were taken from the earth, because Moses, Tiendo felt like Moses also did not leave his body behind, and there is no evidence of his body being left behind. There was no grave. There were no bones found when they went looking for him, and he went out and he walked out into the desert by himself. Anyway, so there's every reason to believe, and the biggest reason to believe is that T and Do knew what they were talking about, and they felt like Moses was taken, and that Elijah was taken with a witness. You know, someone might think, why does the next level do that? Why didn't they have a witness to Moses? Well, see, but what it does is that it gives the opportunity for to upset the strategy of the lower forces, because what they do is they can only go by what was written down, or if they were present when Jesus was talking, they could hear him talk, I think. But I don't know exactly how that works exactly, because but I'm not going to try to guess about it right now because I don't know. But I know that from T and Do's teachings that when we say things aloud, then the lower forces can act on them. And so all the people that were talking about the book of Revelations and the Bible and everything that Jesus said aloud for all these generations were able to be understood by the Luciferian space aliens and the discarnates, and all the humans that heard those things that became discarnates all had that programming. And so they're the ones that actually feed humans now with all the understandings that they have. And then, so when they have those understandings, for instance, that Moses died and his body was left behind, which most people say is the case, because it didn't say that he was taken, then when the updates come, they're challenged to deny the updates like that T and Do brought, because they are glued to their understanding of what happened to Moses, even though they don't have any proof that Moses wasn't taken. And yet there's evidence that that Moses said that there would be a return. It didn't seem like Moses said that he would be returning. What he said was that the return would be just like me. In other words, coming incarnate and coming from among us, among the strain of those vehicles, the genetic strain of those vehicles, picking a vehicle that was groomed to be the next house for the returning older member. So in that way, then it becomes like a filter and a test criteria, because the filter is a test criteria. Actually, it's not like people are automatically filtered out of having a chance to embrace the opportunity to become a member of the next level through connecting with T and Do and overcoming the world through their teachings. Everybody has the opportunity, and everybody has a fair opportunity, although they have to reach for it, and the next level can regulate how much difficulty they have by and give them extra opportunities and different perspectives in order to help them overcome the programming of the misinformation that they've accepted. And it wasn't wrong for them to accept that programming and misinformation, but if they didn't accept it while continuing to ask the next level through the way that Jesus taught to ask, through all his teachings, by abiding by those teachings, not just singling out a few that they believe in, but recognizing all of them, then they won't recognize the returning older member, because they won't see all those same characteristics in the return, like not focusing on the human family, separating from the human family, and in order to bond with your new family, which are all the members, all the believers in the next level, that whose souls return to take new vehicles, to be born in the flesh, born of water, as Jesus talked about, in order to graduate in spirit. So it's and separating from all the human behaviors actually is part of that. Eventually, it's known that it's not going to happen all at once. Like Doe said in over here in what was that, in the USA Today article, which I'm showing you right here. Let's see, where was that? I didn't really think I was going to go here, but since it came up, I might as well. Yeah, here it is. This is from USA Today article that was published in USA Today on, I think it was May 19th, 1993. I think it was. And Doe wrote the entire thing, and it was also in the international edition of USA Today. For one day, it was a third of a page. And if anyone's seen that newspaper, it's like kind of as big as the New York Times. It's not like I don't know whether it's like 16 inches tall and wide. So a third of the page is a lot of space, and we had accumulated enough money to pay for it, because you don't get an information ad for nothing, of course, and it was $30,000, as I recall, for that one day ad. But that was also, I believe, one of the 7 thunders, or roars, from the Lion from the tribe of Judah, who is Jesus returning in his new vehicle, Doe. So, the soul that was in the body named Jesus returning. So anyway, so I'm going to read this one paragraph here, and it says, when the present OA team leaves, which will be very soon, the truth will go with them. You cannot preserve the truth in your religions. It is with you only as long as a truth bearer is with you. Only those from the land of truth can bear it. It can only be your future if you reach out and grab it while it is offered. The truth can be retained only as one of the truth can be retained only as one is physically connected with the next level through an older member. And that relationship requires that non-mammalian thinking and behaviors be sustained. And see, there's another spot here that I wanted to read. Oh, maybe this is it. Okay, right here. So now at the close of an age, every significant soul of this civilization has returned and is in or attached to a physical body to reap their reward. Most who think they are for the kingdom of God are in fact working for the opposing side, the counterfeit gods, in quotes, and will want to condemn us. Your actions, even your thoughts of condemnation towards us, out of allegiance to your God, will cause our part of the heavens to look upon your God with the same rejection. That's judge not lest you be judged. That the way that you judge others, you will be judged. So in other words, if you reject Tiendo, you will be rejected. You and your God will be rejected because it's your God that's rejecting Tiendo. Whatever you think of as your God, even if you think there is no God, that your God then is non-existent. That non-existent God will be rejected, is rejected, because there's no such thing as a well, I'm going to get myself tongue-tied here, but, oh yeah, I wanted to read this one too. Many say they live only for the harvest time, the last days, the second coming. Those are all finally here. Will you accept us as them? You cannot bypass us even in your prayers. You cannot insult your Creator by refusing to go through the ones He has sent to you. There are souls here now for the express purpose of connecting and eventually bonding with the next level through us. Those souls will be protected, out of harm's way, and saved from the approaching sorting out, recycling, and spading under of the Luciferians and their human servants. If you can get your name in our book, on our spacecraft's computer, and only there, making your actions reflect that desire, then you will go with us. And I might as well finish with the summary. The summary was, our surfacing is in reality a test of the public's civility. Can a society that is still dealing with bigotry and prejudices against races, religions, and sexual preference extend the right of existence to some who will see humanity as a stepping stone toward the kingdom of God, and desire to take that step and briefly offer it to others? Or is Earth's present civilization still as primitive as it was 2,000 years ago? We'll see. Of course, this entire thing, but this entire document is worth reading many times. come back to it. You know, if you haven't read it in a while, go back to it and read it again. I can take my own advice on that score, and I do what I do is when I'm trying to remember something, I'm not sure where I got it from exactly. I take the ideas that I got from that, and I seek it out. And I had the idea to go back to USA Today to look for something, and then I saw other things that were answering questions that I've had all along that I wasn't not able to document as well. You know, like in these videos, so that I could give accurate information out. I'm going to read this other one too because it's so apropos. Humans were from the beginning given a prime directive not to kill other humans. In defense or for rightness are no exceptions. Righteousness is what most frequently causes conflict. I'm right, you're wrong. You're causing me trouble, I'll wipe you out. In the best interest of all, of course. The world systems continue to make laws permitting the breakage of higher laws, God's laws. Weapons designed for killing humans are inexcusable. There are numerous methods of controlling a violent person without the necessity of murder. The irony is each killer sends its victims to exactly where they want to go, to their chosen heaven. Humans fight for their desires, what they choose to not overcome, what they cling to. Our desires and attachments, or lack of them, determine which heaven we're going to. Here's another one. The religious cults who have separated from the world have picked up on one major aspect of what is in the air at this time. When the information of how to move from one kingdom level to another is available. What they may have failed to recognize is that experienced clinicians are necessary to take souls through that weaning, that difficult withdrawal from human addictions and binding misinformation concepts. If it weren't necessary to have clinicians present who have previously been taken through that transition, we wouldn't need to be here. Some religious cults might have children, participate in physical or mental abuse, hold members against their will, have weapons, or break laws in general. While we have long been aware that that type of behavior is inappropriate, especially for a transitional classroom. I'll just go to the top just so that if somebody wants to read it right here on my page, they can. They have to read it backwards, right? All right, so, I mean, just reading those documents in a video would be a great service for anybody that can put them together for people that are blind. Okay, so back to this. So the individual is actually, I'm going to just summarize what they were saying. They were saying that because in Revelation 1:20, the term lampstands was used and was actually defined in that verse as congregations or the church, the believers, the overcomers. It's not just anybody, it's somebody that's actually participating in their overcoming. They're pursuing overcoming the world through the teachings of Jesus and Tiendo to date. You can't be overcoming the world and just pay attention to Jesus now. Well, I'm not saying you can't. That's not right to say that, because I think Tiendo said that can't isn't in the dictionary. Or maybe somebody else said that. But I don't think they like that word either. And so they're right, but they're saying that, like for instance, he says here, but when you read through 7 letters to the congregations, which is in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, you find that they are in pretty bad shape. When Christ comes, he cleans his people. Well, they're not all in bad shape. Some of them, he says, are doing well. So he's wrong about that. They're not all in pretty bad shape. And by the way, being in bad shape is part of the human kingdom. You're not going to be in good shape before you graduate. Like Jesus said, none are good but those that seek to do the will of my Father. My Father's the only one that's good, is what he said. He didn't even say he was good. He said, why call me good? He says, my Father's the one that's good. He was measuring himself to his Father. So we should measure ourselves to what Jesus considered to be clean. I mean, in terms of the people that are considering themselves Christians. Christians should measure themselves by what Jesus considers to be clean. And you know, Paul's the one that started this whole idea that he does it for you, that he cleans his people. Yes, he does clean his people. If he didn't come, then none of us would get clean. We'd never clean our house, clean our vehicle. That's what he's talking about doing. It's not cleaning the soul, because the soul, well, I don't know that the soul can actually, well, I don't want to get into that. I just don't know. I don't know if the Luciferian souls have now corrupted information in their souls, or I'll have to research that, but it doesn't really matter. They're corrupted. That's what the bottom line is. They haven't cleaned out their mammalian behavior. They're still, even if they're without sexuality, and they're still into their power trip and their ego of their religiosity, even though it's not religiosity like humans think of it necessarily. It's the New Age religiosity of, not that there's anything wrong with the New Age directions, but what's been labeled New Age is basically the new spirituality, which has nothing to do with discarnates. has to do with like self-improvement and self as the new God. So basically it's ignoring the creators entirely and ignoring those that came from the Creator's kingdom almost entirely, except for the few verses that they quote, like the one where it says God is a spirit, which the word spirit is also synonymous with mind and also synonymous with soul. So, which doesn't make God a spirit in the context of the human definition of spirit, which would be the misinformation mind, or discarnate, which is basically the container for the misinformation mind, and is not does not have any dense physicality to it, where a soul does have a degree of more dense physicality than strictly a frequency object, like software is like a frequency object, I believe. And where firmware is a type of physicality with that that's filled with that frequency-based information, mind. That's the true information if it's from the next level. So anyway, I don't know if I gobbled that up a bunch, but I know I could learn to say it better. And it's probably, well, I could basically read, from some of the documents that the students wrote. That addressed most of what I was saying. But, so please do that. Please go read everything that the students wrote. But there's one that's called Incarnating and Discarnating, I think written by Jan Odie. Another one written by Sun Odie that I forget the name of right now. So he's saying that the two witnesses are a symbol of the students, and I've heard this before, because the lampstands are the congregation. But what he's missing is that the lampstands aren't Christ's, and yet the two witnesses are both Christ's, which he actually refers to Zechariah 4, where he talks about in Zechariah 4:14, he says that the two are anointed. And anointed is the biggest key word that is the definition of a Christ. Even though you can describe that a lot more, what a Christ is. A Christ is an overcomer, someone who has overcome the human world entirely, even many times. They've been christened with the olive oil. And the olive oil is the mind, I believe. Christened with the mind of the next level. The Holy Spirit is the olive oil. And that's actually what is, by consuming it, is burning it. It's just like you burn, it's like you're burning, when you're giving it out to somebody else, you're burning that olive oil. You're burning that mind. You're consuming, you're changing that mind into a form that projects the truth to others. It projects light to others. It's the through the exercise of it, and it's energy. It's literally energy. And Do would, many times when T and Do would stimulate the classroom to grow faster, there would be a surge of pulling from T and Do's mind, and that would come through Do. That the pulling would happen because he was our immediate connection with T, of course, and he's our older member, and T is our older member, like our grandfather. So when we're thirsting for the truth, the first place that goes to is Do. When we have established a connection with Do. And I don't know how it works when he's outside his vehicle, whether it goes through whatever monitors they have, whatever helpers they have, because it doesn't, it's going to still go to Do because the helpers are going to bring their questions to Do to check with them to see if they provided the right answer. If they provided an answer, some of the answers they have already been given. They know the answers to some of the questions. Okay, so but they still would check with Do by filing reports, I believe. Maybe not. Maybe they have ways of doing it that are kind of automated. I don't know exactly how that might all work, but I can tell you one thing, that it's very thorough and very, that I know for sure, and I know it's also very complete and organized and useful and filled with checks and balances, because every member wants to be checked. That's the part of their mind. That's part of the lesson ground in the classroom. To want the check partner for everything they say. To want to be told where they've done something wrong. In other words, where that person was saying that, Christ comes, he's going to clean his people. He's going to teach them how to clean themselves, using his information, using his mind to do that. And by doing that, they're consuming his flesh, because his body, that's what I was saying before, and I got off the track, Do would come back after we were pulling from his mind, and he would sometimes tell us that, and T sometimes would tell us that you all have really been pulling, because Do can hardly walk. He can only get out of bed sometimes, because the students were pulling so hard. For the next step, for correction, for help with overcoming. That's what they're pulling on. How to learn the previous lessons. Every time we listen to the tapes, read the videos, read the documents, we're pulling on their mind. And they can feel it. They know it. However they feel it now and know it, they do. I don't think it takes a toll on their physical bodies, but maybe it does. But I know that they replace what they give to us. By giving it away, we make room in our vehicle for more. And that's why we can progress in understanding more and more and better, and also being able to express it better and better. And in that way, we also then become challenged, because once we can express it better and better, we can actually slip into a type of trap that gives us confidence in what we say, so that we're not as open, we're not continuing to check and seek correction. I mean, it's one thing to have confidence, to be able to say, this is what Tiendo said, this is what, and quote them, and feel like we're in the ballpark. But there's no end to growth. So we're continuously tested in an accelerated way because the lower forces are trying to trip us up. And they want us to say things that aren't from Tiendo's mind. Because they want to confuse anybody that's paying attention to these things, because they want to know more and more about Tiendo's mind from individuals that have had the first-hand experience, and which is naturally part of the process. Just like I want to know more and more of what's on Tiendo's mind, and I'll take it from wherever I can get it. If it's from somebody that's listening to this, and they've read something, I was just corrected the other day. They've read something that corrects me, then bring it to me. Bring it to me. Or if they have a question about my interpretation of something that Jesus said or is in the book of Revelations, or think they see more of what it's talking about, and even can refer back to something that Tiendo said, bring it up. Let me look at it. Let me go back to that verse. Let me examine it. And you know what? I can guarantee you that I would probably see more than I saw before the last time I looked at that verse or that writing from Tiendo. Because that's the way it's designed. It's designed that based on our thirst and our development of our soul. Because when we draw in Tiendo's information into our soul, that's where it becomes part of us. Even though we don't want it to be us in a way that's separate from Tiendo's mind. Because then we will separate from them and think of that as us, and then think of ourselves as gods, whether we use that terminology or not. We can actually trip and fall into that mindset. And the Luciferians would love for souls, because they can't make souls. So they can't, and souls have a special ability to, I'm not sure exactly what they are, but they can go places in the spirit world, or maybe what would be considered the first heaven, or maybe there's a differentiation between what would be considered the first heaven and the spirit world, that spirits can't go to, that spirits that never developed inside of a soul can go to. Or accumulated inside of a soul pocket can go to. So, and then you said, well, I'm not, I think I got enough to where this, spending enough time on this person, but I do want to finish it with one thing from the book of Daniel, which is right here. And this again you can get from Strong's. For $8 you get all these, you get a ton of information that's digitized and works through an Internet Explorer type of interface. And shows you all the Hebrew terms here. Well, I brought this one up because of the reference to Michael. Michael meaning the name of an archangel. And it means who is like God. Who is like God? Who is like a member of the next level? Who is, I would say, equivalent to, God would be relative to Theos or Jehovah in this context. In the Hebrew context, when you see the word God, most of the time it's Jehovah, or it's like during the Moses time when he got that, when he gave that name to, which means existing one. He said also, I am. He said, what Moses said, what should we call you? And he said, what should we say? What should we tell Pharaoh sent us? Who sent us? And say, I am sent you. And that's the word Jehovah, and which also means existing one. It's like saying, I exist. I am the existing one. Because humans don't exist, really. And T and Do used to say that. T has said it a number of times that I remember. And I would think, humans don't exist? Well, that's because if you only live for 70 or whatever many years a human lives, maybe up to 120 years, that seemed to be what after the flood, the Lord said that he was going to limit the age of a human to about 120 years. And anyway, so so if we only lived the maximum 120 years, we all know how small that is in comparison to everything else around us, besides the lower kingdom levels of the animals and that have lesser lifespans, most of them. But some of them have a greater lifespan, and trees have a greater lifespan, but they don't have the facility to actually become a member of the next level. That's the big difference. And they have to move up through the other evolutionary kingdoms to get to a place to where the spirit can then move into a soul. Not move into a soul, move into a human baby. So that baby then can be given a soul pocket to then become a member of the next level, potentially. So Tindo talked about how a dog in the animal kingdom could actually move up into a domesticated dog. In other words, they've become so domesticated that they don't want anything to do with the dog kingdom anymore, the animal kingdom anymore. They think of themselves as a member of that human family, and in every way. And they want to serve that human family, and they can't do enough for that human family, and they get all their pleasure from that human family. Well, they're not going to get all their pleasure, of course. They're going to enjoy eating, and having dog fun, okay. But and Tina also compared it to horses. As once they accept the training, they become domesticated horses. They don't want to. They love that. They love the attention they get from their masters in the human kingdom, and because of that, an example that Tindo used of the dogs, when there's a baby then in that family, they can potentially move into that baby, I suppose. Well, and what's moving into that baby is the spirit that's moving into that baby. It's the new information that has accumulated in that spirit entity that came from the human kingdom, that is then becomes an influence on that baby. Like if the dog is always around that baby, then that baby is looking at the dog and feeling the love that that dog has, and so is influencing that human to love that animal and what they feel from that animal. And so in that way, that spirit from that dog is going into that baby. And I'm not saying that that's the only spirit that goes into that baby, but Tiendo talked about how that can explain some of the reasons why a human could, from a baby, be in a what would be called a retarded condition. They're a first-time human. It might be, it's like the first time and I don't claim to understand that any more than that, because Tiendo didn't talk about it any more than that I'm aware. And but I believe they said that that's not the only way the lower levels move up. I actually might have that wrong. But they did say right from the beginning that this is a time period when all levels of life were moving up. So there's a form of moving up that's relative to the kingdom level that level of life starts in. And Tiendo talked about the mineral kingdom being an evolutionary kingdom as the first evolutionary kingdom, and then the plant kingdom, and then the animal kingdom, and then the human kingdom, and then the level above human kingdom. And growth continues from there, but they didn't talk about it as additional kingdoms after that I was ever aware of. So I'm going to try to go quickly through this book of Daniel, chapter 12, to get to the place that I wanted to talk about more. And I'll go back to talking about Michael. Well, no, I guess since I'm here, I might as well go back to Revelation 12. Let's see, which one was it? It's not that one. It's not that one. Sorry, I'm looking at things on the screen here. Let me just go here. Oh, it's on the screen already, that's right. Okay, so it's Revelation 12 actually, where it talks about the woman that is T, clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she's with child, and that child is offspring. It's not necessarily child. It's from the word gaster, which is has to do with the belly, the stomach. Right, so in other words, she's about to give birth because it says she's travailing in birth. So it's a challenge, it's a job, it's a difficulty. And then there appeared another wonder in heaven. That's talking about the Luciferians that have 7 heads and 10 horns, that I believe are the best represented as the G7 and the G10. And it's interesting that the G7 became the G8 with Russia, and then when Russia went into Crimea not too many years ago, they removed Russia from the G8, and so they became the G7 again, which then, refers to the dragon, which is also the beast, because the dragon is the mouthpiece of the beast. The Luciferians have control over the U.S. government and many governments around the world that are all many of them are all part of the beast through the United Nations. Anyway, but those are the heads, and the 10 horns are the working structures, which represent the financial ministers, actually, and the economies, the 10 greatest industrial economies on the planet. And that also went through a change to where they added Switzerland, but they considered Switzerland to be at first I forgot what the name of it was, but then they kept the name G10 even though they added Switzerland, which was interesting. And so then it could basically then apply to prophecy more directly. So maybe the next level gave them those ideas and said, just leave the name the same, And the same with the Russian thing. You were the G8, but let's go back to calling yourself the G7. And horns actually comes from hairs on the head, which is an indication of being many parts to those horns, many different strands of hair that are all they're all considered to be the symbols of strength and courage. So strength is in wealth. Is the biggest form of strength that those horns have. That's why they're the financial ministers. So the bankers have the most strength, because without the bankers, you don't have any military, because there's nobody to fund the development of all those weapon systems and to pay all those people to kill people. So and I'm going to go through this even more later, but then you see here how his tail drew a third part of the heavens and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman and was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. This is a different child in this case. Instead of saying that this is now Teknon, which means offspring. So and we know that Jesus was the offspring of the Father. And we know that Doe considered himself the offspring to T, considered T his father, his heavenly father, his older member. And it says that, so he's going to be brought forth to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And that's what I talked about before in Revelation 11, where that actually takes place after he leaves. Because he's not really ruling all nations with a rod of iron until he leaves, because before that, basically he's under the, he doesn't have that kind of overview. He doesn't have that, he's got a task to where he's incarnate in that human vehicle that was named Doe. And so the only rule he's bringing about are the rules to overcoming the world that were given to him by his older member, and that he learned about when he was becoming an older member. And in order to teach the students what they had to do in order to become older members, become younger members, that they could eventually become older members as well, and have their own children, their own students. If that's the choice that they made to go into that department of life, which anyway, so and so that child, that offspring, the same word, is caught away to God, to God being in this case Theos, which refers to deity, so it's referring to T. I mean, because they're talking about two people here at this time, so they're not referring to Doe as a god, even though he is a god, he is a deity, his soul, but he's serving in a child capacity to his older member now. I don't know. I probably don't need to explain this, because I know most of you that are following these broadcasts probably could explain it better than I can, and don't need to have this kind of stuff explained. But it doesn't hurt. It helps me actually to try to explain it, and I always learn more about what I don't know when I'm explaining it, and that's why I got my hemming and hawing here, because I'm not going to my book where I wrote a lot of this down, and it's probably said better there than I'm saying it now. But sometimes I see things more now than I saw when I was writing the book, and so there's a potential for additional things to potentially come through, perspectives to come through. But what I was getting to is where he says, and the woman fled into the wilderness, which Joe talked about in that USA Today article. But he didn't use the word wilderness. I'm not going to go back to that now, but anybody else can certainly go back to it and see that connection. Because that was when we went to Wyoming. And it doesn't say that everybody was here, but that's part of being birthed to the throne. The whole reason they're coming is for the student body. And when the time period when Doe was being born to the throne was the time period he was awakening. And during the time period he was awakening included the time period when they came public as the return of the two witnesses, as the return of the same family that was Jesus and his father, as human individual metamorphosis, teaching that process of metamorphosis into the next level, which is overcoming the human kingdom, behaviors and ways, which is also the soul birth or spirit birth into that kingdom. So So the students are there. They're assumed, and the way T and Doug talked about this was that, originally, is that they were like the Carib beetle. And the Carib beetle, C-A-R-O-B, I think it was, dragged its young everywhere it went. Drags them all. And so that was the example that T gave of us, that she was like the beetle, and the big beetle, the oldest beetle. She didn't say it that way, but they just said that they didn't talk about, at that point they talked about, see, because woman in this, and actually the definition of woman here in Revelation 12:6 is gune, G-U-N-E, and it's thought to be probably from the base of 1096, which I'm not going to be able to go to that easily right now, but it means a woman of any age, whether a virgin or married or a widow, a wife, or a betrothed woman. But you know what? I gotta go to this other Revelation 12:6. I gotta go to here. Oh, I don't want to do this place. I want to go to Revelation 12:6 over here. Where is that? Oh, there it is. Okay. But I want to go to 12:6, which is up. Where is that? Oh, I guess it's this one here. That's it, I guess. Okay, so let me go over to here, and then go over to Revelation 12:6. I got so many windows open, and sometimes I get confused, because I have repeat windows open. The free Bible, I have like 4 or 5 windows open, because before I started this broadcast, I was trying to see where I wanted to go. But I need a better way to do this. I guess I should take the time to set up my software better. I got some ideas about that. But anyway, 12:6, get rid of this, is going to show that the woman, I did that just so you can see so the other software gives you as definitions for the term how it was used, which is good, it's very handy, but it's not as clear and able to look to the background as in Strong's Concordance and Greek and Hebrew dictionary. Because then it says probably from the base of Ginomai, which is 1096, which actually says then, expand that further, there, so that you can see the whole thing. Okay, so Ginomai, to cause, this is what I'm looking for, to cause to be generated, to become, to cause to come into being, to cause to exist, to cause to become, to cause to arise, be assembled, be assembled. So here we go. The woman which could be taken as a plural, by the way. Well, it doesn't matter because T and Do were operating as one partnership. once they met and awakened to their task. And so they were check partners. But I guess you could say that T was a primary at first, but just to get Doe ready, because Doe was going to assume the primary position, and that's what is saying they went to the throne. And that primary and secondary term were terms used by T and Doe to describe task assignments. Whether it was in the lab, you could be assigned to be in the lab as a primary, so that when the primary was doing a task of a recipe, they would be the one that actually did the measuring. And the check partner would be the one that would be standing right next to them, and that they would pick up the bottle that said cinnamon on it, for instance, and they would say to the check partner and show to the check partner that this is cinnamon that they had, and then they would take the spoon that was the teaspoon, and they would say this is a teaspoon, and the check partner would see that they have the teaspoon, and then they would see this is the formula, which would be in human terms a recipe, and they would say in it said that you needed 1 teaspoon of cinnamon in this recipe, and so they would take it, and then they would take their little knife, and they would dip into the cinnamon, and then scrape off the cinnamon, and they would hold the knife on a certain angle so that not too much of the cinnamon would come out of that spoon. Because if you notice, if you're ever leveling spices and things like that, the knife will I use my finger now for that, but in the classroom, the way was to do it the way T and Doe said to do it. And I think I should use a utensil, because you're actually touching that cinnamon that's going back into that container. And so potentially, if you got any kind of bacteria on your finger, it's going back into that container. So some of it. And so I've been lax in following some of those procedures, but I also don't think that relative to the procedures that I need to pay more attention to, those are lesser offenses, lesser things to mimic. So anyway, so that was the so basically I'm showing here basically that they were working together to and she was being fed for 1,103 days for that period of time, which happens to be the same amount of time as that's something I just 100 here is okay from. Well, that's interesting. Okay, but I'm not going to go into that right now. If I think of something to say about that in the next broadcast, I'll do that. But here's where we finally got to Michael, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. Okay, so he's already been birthed to the throne. Doe's already been birthed to the throne. And they went into the wilderness, and that's where now the war starts. And that's where Tiendo said, we're going to get busy now with your overcoming. Oh, I see I'm being cut off here, but you don't care what I look like anyway. It's more important to have all this information on the screen. But I can actually have the best of both worlds, all worlds here. Anyway, so this is the only reference to Michael. Let me think a second, though. There might have been one reference to Michael. Yeah, there was one. There was another reference to Michael in some of the letters from. And there's one reference to Daniel that Jesus made. So Jesus made the connection to Daniel, and now in this book of Revelation that came from Jesus and Tiendo, they're making reference to Michael. And Daniel's reference to Michael was that Michael is the archangel that brought Daniel information. And an archangel is a captain of angels. And Doe said he was a captain, compared to T, who he thought was like an admiral. So I just wanted to make those connections at this point. But the war in heaven is the war in all the elevated areas. And that has to do with, it's a war, because in actually means in place, time, or state. It's the war in the state of heaven. In other words, it's a war for souls, is what it really is. And souls come from heaven, and from the next level, from the evolutionary level above human, which is the kingdom in the heavens. And also war also means at heaven, or for the sake of heaven. See, all these definitions all apply. So we can try to take it literally, but this was written to be symbolized in order for the full truth to be hidden until this time now, when Tiendo came. And that, yes, is being provided through these broadcasts, because I'm trying to be an instrument of that for Doe. Anyway, so let me get away from that and go back to the Old Testament. Which was where? Over here. Okay. So I'm not going to go back to Revelations here. Anyway, it doesn't like when I do that anyway with this part of the software. Oh no, this is a New Testament thing here. Okay, I got the wrong one. That's the one here. Okay, so now the context of this is really interesting. He's saying, Michael chapter 12, verse 1, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince withstandeth, and here we're talking about standing again. Remember that term was used before, Michael standing up, which is actually the definition of resurrection, to stand up again. So they're saying that at that time, and what does the time mean? It has to do with that after when this was given. And even can be a long due season. And the season was, according to Doe, an age according to Doe was 2,000 years. A season can be a different time frame. But due season, a long due season, the season that's due to come. And that's clarified a little further on, that Michael is going to stand up. Okay, now, but what he's talking about at this point is the time from Daniel, who was maybe 1,000 years before Jesus stood up. He's saying that this is Jesus actually that's standing up. And then he's clarifying that it's the great prince. And Jesus was considered to be the prince. Also, Lucifer was considered to be a prince. Because remember, Lucifer is a rival of Jesus. So they might have been in the same classroom at one time as souls. And that he graduated and Lucifer dropped out. And then who knows how long ago that could have been in a previous civilization, for sure. Maybe even on a different planet, potentially. I don't know. But the great prince is standing at this time, again, of course. And when you say that they're standing, they're in a human vehicle at that point. They're not standing with their next level vehicle, because how can they teach those students standing in a next level vehicle? They wouldn't relate to them at all. They would be like mesmerized, and they would fall down on their faces out of fear. They have to come incarnate in order to interface with the lower life forms. And he's standing for the children of thy people, the children of Israel. And there shall be a time of trouble. That's where the idea of tribulation comes from. See that? Tribulation. Time of great tribulation. When the time of the people shall be delivered. To be smooth, to release. To be released or rescued from the human kingdom. Rescued from the recycling. But also to bring forth the young. That's birthing them. To bring forth the young is birthing them, is delivering them. Delivering them. And T and Doe said that they were midwives. And Doe was going to serve as the midwife to the student body. And she was just getting him going. And then she was going back, which it talks about in the end of Revelation chapter 12. And who is going to be delivered? Everyone that's found written in the book. And that also means saved. See? Delivered is also saved. So that's all the souls that are coming back. That applies to now. All the souls that were not ready to graduate with in the first fruit harvest, with the first wave, now have the chance to graduate to their next station, and will go with Doe, will be saved, will be part of the harvest. Their souls, not their physical vehicles. Next level doesn't need physical vehicles, human vehicles. If they want to do it that way, they could. They could take physical vehicles, but there's no indication of that I've seen, and that Doe gave. But I'm not the one to make that determination. But let's move on to the next verse in Daniel chapter 12, because I didn't get to the place I really wanted to get to. I can see this broadcast is going to have to pretty much stop with this. It says, but many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. That's saying that all the souls are going to be awakening that have had any significant relationship with the next level. I showed you that in USA Today, where Doe was talking about that. And all those souls are back. And there might be 144,000 of them. Some of them to everlasting life. So you don't know how many they're talking about here and how many will actually make it to graduate, because you don't have everlasting life until you're actually an adult member of the next level. Even the infant members of the next level have to come back again and overcome the remaining humanness that they had when they graduated, which I think pertains to some of those that joined in 1994. I'm not saying all, I don't know. But Doe said that there were some, but he also said that those older ones that had joined in 1975 and stayed with the program had completed, in USA Today ad actually, he said that they had sufficiently completed their transition. Even though some of those that were there when he said that and wrote that in 1993 dropped out, like Pam Odie, Ann Doty, and myself. I don't know if there were any others at that point that dropped out. But that it's not over yet. So and then some are going to awaken to shame and everlasting contempt, which shame is disgrace, rebuke, reproach. Well, it doesn't say damnation. It doesn't say that they were going to be recycled. But then again, everlasting, let's see what that means. Perpetual, concealed. And that's a little different from the sense of everlasting. Or time out of mind, okay, or eternity, or frequentivity. Well, Tiendo said that those that dropped out, well, Tiendo said that all who came would return. They didn't differentiate who all was, but she was talking about all the souls that came. But she might have been talking about all the ones that were at the stage that were ready to graduate, that were potentially able to graduate, would return. So I don't know exactly. So I mean, and they also said that those that dropped out of the classroom, when they returned to the next level, would be, I think the word was embarrassed, because the next level would be all gathered. There'd be many members of the next level to have like a welcoming ceremony. And it talks about that in Revelation chapter 4, I believe. Tens of thousands of members of the next level. Tiendo said that there were not millions of next level members. They said there were thousands. They didn't say how many thousands. But thousands and thousands is one of the terms that were used. And but that was a way of saying that there were many thousands without actually giving a concrete number. So to shame, now they put "and" in parentheses here, so to indicate that it wasn't in the document. It wasn't part of the manuscript. I mean, and some to shame. I'm not sure how to interpret this, but there's some options here with everlasting. I mean, if you can go back here and see, to veil from sight, okay? So some to shame, to veil from sight, contempt, repulse, an object of aversion, abhorring, contempt. Well, I guess this is saying that some are going to be fallen angels. They're not gonna recover. And they that be wise, and the shame part of it, where they would feel shame having dropped out, was not because the next level members were putting shame on them. It was because they would recognize how they let, and Tiendo talked about this, how they let relatively small things stand in the way of their graduation. I mean, there were big things for them to overcome, but only because they didn't ask for help. They didn't stay with the program 100%. Tiendo also said that we all were capable of seeing it to the end, to the graduation. If I had abided by all my lessons, in other words, when I started to like cheat on little procedures, you know, like just overlook them as being not a big deal. Or, well, I'll give you one example. One of the procedures that we had was when we had a nocturnal emission, when we had like an orgasm in our sleep. And if we didn't, it wasn't considered a slippage, a breaking a procedure, or giving in to sensuality if it happened and we didn't stimulate it. Even if it happened in a dream, that wouldn't have been considered to be, although we were supposed to program ourselves before we went to sleep, that to awaken if we were having a dream that was of that nature. But the procedure we had, if that happened, was to get up whatever time it was at night, and go to the bath chamber, the restroom or the bathroom, and sign out a washcloth and use that to clean ourselves and to I don't know if our procedure was to wash out our underwear and deposit it in a hamper. And then go back to bed. In the sign out, we had to put the date and the time, our name, and what we signed out, a washcloth, or if we needed more than one, I guess. And so that report would be sent to Tiendo. So I was cheating. I wasn't doing that. I was I think I did do the washcloth. Sometimes I did use the washcloth. But maybe what I didn't do was do something with the underwear, what we call seat covers. We didn't call them underwear. Seat covers, and a woman's bra was called a slingshot. And but sometimes what I ended up doing was washing out the stain in my seat covers, and then putting them back on again, so that they were just wet in that one spot. I only washed that one spot. I think sometimes I didn't sign out the cloth, so that was breaking procedure. And because of that, and other little procedures that I broke, which I'm not going to go into right now, I was not staying with the program 100%. And so I was losing the mind that I would have gained by following all the procedures, and that would have given me the strength to draw on to ask for help when I was attacked by influences. Because by applying all the mind procedures that we were given, T said we were building our mind muscle. And that muscle was actually making us stronger, increasing our willpower, increasing our restraint, increasing our determination, and fortifying all our ability so that we had the energy to actually combat the Luciferian space alien Satans that were assigned as our adversaries, and the thoughts that were emanating from the human vehicle of wanting to think about the past. And I didn't have a problem thinking about the past. You know, some had problems in that area more than the area that I had problems in. So looking back on it, you can see why I didn't graduate with my class. I had the capacity to do it. I know I did. They told me I did. All right, so then the wise will shine as the brightness of the firmament. In other words, comparing them to stars, which in Revelations there's comparisons of graduates to stars as well. In fact, it said in Revelation 12:1 that that the woman's crown was a crown of 12 stars. In other words, the 12 were initially, she graduated them. T did, I guess. And, oh wow. I wonder if the female students with Jesus were graduate students returning who had to come back to finish their overcoming. They maybe were graduated to infant vehicles. Or, I don't know. I mean, I think you can see where I'm coming to, that the same procedure was taking place, and that the 12 disciples were to be newly graduated to infant vehicles. And that would make the total of 24 elders, or the 4 living I don't know. I might have that mixed up, but there might be some truth to some of that. But I don't think I got it right yet. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm so in the habit of trying to make connections that, I can get off track. But as long as everybody knows that, that's what I'm doing, I'm just trying to understand it better than I ever did before. It's not really important. A lot of this isn't that important. But if it helps talk to Christians that have come out of Christianity because they've seen through the way that Christianity became the distortion of the truth, then maybe it could be of some value to people. Because they're going to be stars forever and ever, many to righteousness, right? Okay, but then Daniel is told to shut up the words and seal this writing. Seal that writing. Just like John was told to seal his writing. Remember, this is taking place after Moses, or even after Elijah, I believe. And there was a student body with Elijah, too. It's not talked about a whole lot. But they're observing when he left. And they were suffering because he was leaving. And then it's saying, shut up the words, seal the book, even to the time of the end. So it's actually saying, seal the book to the time of the end. To the time when the end. So that's not indefinitely sealing it. The time of the end is when it's going to be unsealed. And at that time, many shall run to and fro, many or abundant, abound, and knowledge is increased. In other words, wow, right? Don't we know that knowledge has been increased starting in earnest in the late 1800s? That's when knowledge really took off, and I documented that in my book by the appearance of science fiction and UFO flaps and inventions galore, and eventually electricity and air travel. We all know all this, right? So then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, and one on the other side. And that's what I wanted to get to. This is talking about the two witnesses. He looked. This is during the time of the end. when knowledge is increased. So it's after that. And they're standing. In other words, they have human vehicles again. They're stood. Other. Hinder. Generally. Next. Other. Another man. Following. Following. Next. Strange. Two. Strange too is interesting, right? Because to the human kingdom, these would be very strange individuals that are coming from the next level. Strangers to the human kingdom. Sort of like aliens, but not aliens because they own the human kingdom. But Doe made reference to that in one of the Beyond Human tapes. Understanding why people would call them aliens. But more like extraterrestrials, but not glued to a planet. And one other two. One on this side, this location, but use both of a place and a time. Okay, so one on this wave, temple area versus the courtyard area, bank of the river, bank meaning language, margin, vessel, or border, one border of the river, which also has to do with language and speech, one different way of talking about in this area that's a border. And that might be the Mississippi River. Tiendo said that the Mississippi River was the dividing part of the United States, that they felt like west of that Mississippi River was where they felt the closest contact with their older member. And whenever they would go east of the Mississippi, and they tried a number of times, even took the class a couple times east of the Mississippi to a camping area near Biloxi, north of Biloxi. And another time, Doe took us to Atlanta. Those are the two times we were actually east of the Mississippi River, and both times it was very short-lived. And when we got to Atlanta, Doe felt like he was underwater. He felt like he couldn't feel T's presence, like he could when he was back in Colorado, where we came from when we moved to Atlanta for 2 weeks. So this is like, and this is like talking about how T and Doe came, and their terminology was all generic. T and Doe used that term to describe their terminology, generic. But what Jesus called it was plain and bold. Bolder, and no parables, no stories anymore. So T and Doe, they were speaking directly about what the next level was and where they came from, outer space instead of heaven. Instead of, like generalities, they said that they felt closest to the constellation Orion whenever they looked up at the heavens. No wonder why they're being told that the reptilians are from Orion, that are coming to destroy the planet. But they're not reptilians. They're evolutionarily above reptilian and mammalian. And Well, maybe that was the last time there was a garden. Maybe there was an Orion, where maybe that's where Noah got his birth. And Lucifer fell. Maybe it was where they were from. And they brought them with them when they came here, through a wormhole, I would guess. I don't remember Tiendo saying that. But they did say that there were highways in the heavens, or freeways in the heavens. I don't know if they used the word, I think they said highways in the heavens. And that's what Bob Lazar started talking about, to where they could bend time and space so that in a very short time you come through that highway and you get to the next location that your next level is preparing to become a garden. And they might be one-way highways so that the Luciferian space aliens couldn't get back from that direction. And the bank, and the way this, there's also like the street as one river of Egypt. Interesting that they're talking about Egypt, because in Revelation chapter 11, it talks about the street and how Egypt is actually means the two straits or streets. Two straits or streets, which can also mean the two waves, the two pathways, the two opportunities for graduation harvesting, which is in Revelation chapter 14 talks about two different harvests. One is the winepress harvest, when there's a great deal of bloodshed. That's the tribulation harvest. That's what we're in right now, starting in. We haven't really started it that much yet, but it's starting, which encompasses a lot more death, because in a harvest, all the stalks that are like the physical bodies of the plants have to be cut down. But the fruit, if some of those stalks have fruit, that fruit which is like as a soul or a spirit, will be saved for a future opportunity to be planted. But it's only during the first one that well, in both cases, an older member comes and takes that harvest to them. In Revelation chapter 14, it's one who is like the Son of Man, is the way it's said. So it's, in other words, was also at one point a Son of Man. So that would be T, I think, who comes the first time to collect the classroom. The Hale-Bopp comet is the clothed with the comet, clothed with the sun, clothed with a white light. I think Revelation 14 says that. Where should I go for that? See, then it says here, I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, swear by him who liveth forever and ever, for a time and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. Well, I believe that's referring to Revelation chapter 13, scattering of the holy people. So it also means be beaten in sunder, break in pieces, broken, dash in pieces, cause to be discharged, dispersed, be overspread, scattered. Which I have to then go to, back to Revelation 13. Well, I should probably go to it over here instead. Which I'm getting wiped out here in my energy. So I'm going to just finish with this. Return to no, I don't want that one. I want this one. Huh? Sorry, I'm confused. There we go. That's 12. I just need to go back to 13. Well, talking about scattering the power of the holy people, I think that's talking about those now that are standing for Tiendo and believing in everything they talked about and said and taught and did. And even though understanding that believing in all that 100% is a process. So if you're having doubts about some of it, the more you stay with it, the more you will get more and more of Tiendo's mind into your soul, so that you will actually believe it all. So you are brainwashing yourself. Yes, you are. You're washing your brain out of the old information, the misinformation, and you're replacing it with the new mind from the next level, the Holy Spirit from the next level, the holy mind from the next level, the divine, next level's mind, Tiendo's mind, the chief's mind, because they're all instruments for that mind, and they're pure instruments. So they're not changing it, they're not reducing its quality, except in a way that's natural for them to do in order to still have an interface with us. Because Tiendo's mind isn't as big as the Chief of Chiefs' mind. I think it's safe to say that, even though I don't know how to compare it. So, so the scattering of the holy people, the power of the holy people, I mean, that did happen, I believe, in Chicago, when the Tiendo scattered us. And that was scattering our power to work as one. Well, it wasn't scattering our power. Well, it was scattering our power. So, let me go back to that scattering thing on Daniel. I'm going to have to continue with this Daniel part. To scatter power of holy people. All these things shall be finished. I mean, Jesus' disciples were also scattered. So, but in the context of all this, they were talking about the time of the end. So it's after Michael came incarnate as Jesus that this is all referring to, because that was said before this. If we want to look at it in a way that's, you know, in the context of it all. And but this times and a half a time seems to be directly related to, I wish I could have two screens on here. I guess I probably could. I just have to start up, I don't know, I had merged them together somehow for a video. But this is fine. But Revelation 13 talks about how here it is. And it was given to him, talking about the dragon, to make war with the saints. Now this, mind you, is well after they left. And how do I know that? I'll show you how I know that in a second. I believe I know that. I guess I could be wrong about it, but there are a few indications of it. And to overcome them. So I was seeing scatter them. And the power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. So it was given him to make war with the saints and overcome them. Now, yeah, that part in Daniel might refer to when Tiendo and students were subdued, because that's the same word. In the Greek, you can see here, and actually the primary meaning from Nike actually is to subdue. Which you could look at as subduing your vehicle. In the one context that was used when they exited and they used Nike sneakers. They were subduing their human vehicles. And they're also conquering them, and that's what you're talking about here. They're conquering. What are they conquering? They're conquering a human vehicle, the human kingdom, overcoming the human kingdom, the human vehicle, prevailing against, getting the victory against. You know what? I'm going to end it with this at this point. But see, these prophecies repeat themselves. So they have different applications for each wave. And so this, I believe, is talking about when then we are going to be subdued. Those that, I'm not saying I'm a saint, because maybe I haven't qualified yet for that. But a saint really is defined as someone who is physically pure, morally blameless, or religious, ceremonially consecrated, most holy thing, but an awful thing, but from Hagos, innocent, chaste, clean, pure, but also they've washed their robes. In other words, they're not participating in human behavior to the best of their ability. They're washing their robes. They're chaste. They're not no longer reproducing. And so that's something for all of us to live up to if we want to go the distance as a student of Tiendo. Becoming an active student would be like to be a saint. You might say, well, that's an awful big task to swallow. But what I suggest is shooting for it. And if you fall, if you slip, then try to recover and get back on the bandwagon. But, get back on that wagon. Instead of falling off the wagon and staying falling off. And don't worry about the terminology. Don't worry about the definitions of terms. Just do your best. That's all that Tiendo asks for. To do your best and ask them for help. And try to apply the help that you receive. And keep on studying what they said. And asking them for how you can be a better service. What you can do, where you can go, who you might talk to. Because there's going to come a point to where you don't have that opportunity anymore, according to this. And the reason I thought it was well, there's a number of reasons. I'm going to have to actually close here because I'm probably up to 2 hours already. And take it up again at the next broadcast. So good night.